Hi guys, welcome back, and today we are going to be discussing the Bill of Rights. We are going to be analyzing and evaluating the text, intent, meaning, and importance of the Bill of Rights, and we are also going to discuss the historical reasons why the Constitution has been amended. The activity that goes with this lesson is a foldable, and you will be drawing a picture and creating a rhyme to help you remember all of the amendments in the Bill of Rights. So come see me when you get a chance, and I'll explain how to do this foldable. Okay, so let's briefly talk about why the Bill of Rights was incorporated into the Constitution in the first place. So when the Constitution was written, there were some states who were not in agreement with it, especially those small southern states. They worried that the Constitution was creating a federal government that was too strong and that their individual rights were not being protected. And so in order to ratify the Constitution, the states demanded that a Bill of Rights be included. And so once the Constitution was ratified, the Founding Fathers went to work at creating this new document that would guarantee individual rights for its citizens. And so the first 10 amendments of the Constitution are lumped together and called the Bill of Rights. And the last of these amendments was ratified in 1791 by 2/3 of the legislatures and state legislatures, and therefore was included in the Constitution. Okay, so the First Amendment actually guarantees several rights and protections, and in order to remember all of them, I always teach it by using the acronym RAPS, RAPPS, and each of them stands for a protection or right that's guaranteed by the First Amendment. So the R stands for freedom of religion. It states that the government cannot restrict your freedom to worship. You can worship any religion you want or none at all. And it also states that the government cannot establish an official religion. That's where we get the idea of separation of church and state. The A stands for assembly. Congress cannot deny individuals the right to gather peacefully and talk about whatever they want. We have the right to do that, and they cannot limit that. All right, the next one is the freedom of the press. So, under the freedom of the press, newspapers, the radio, television, all the media, they have the right and the freedom to say anything that they want or print anything that they want, and they cannot be punished by the government in retaliation. This is a bedrock of our democracy because the press is what keeps people well informed in order to make their voting decisions and to hold their government accountable. So the press historically has revealed a lot of corruption in our government, or maybe the wrongdoings of people in the country, and this has led to accountability. And so making sure that our press is free to say what they want without any fear of punishment is a bedrock of our democracy. The second P stands for the right to petition. So Congress cannot deny anyone the right to contact their government officials and ask them to change a law or to propose a new law or to vote a certain way on a bill. We have the right to contact them because they work for us. And then there is the freedom of speech. So the freedom of speech pretty much protects our freedom to say and write most things in public. Speech is not always protected. There are some limits placed on speech in some circumstances. For example, you cannot say bomb on a plane. You cannot yell fire in a crowded movie theater because this would create a clear and present danger. This would create panic, and that speech is not protected. And then there's also, for example, on TV, in certain stations, you cannot say bad words, or content is regulated. Again, because speech is not entirely free, there are some limits placed on it by the government. Okay, so the Second Amendment, you've probably heard a lot about. It's the right to bear arms, and it states that a well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state, and that people should have the right to bear arms. And then there is the Third Amendment, which prohibits the government from placing troops in people's homes without their permissions. The Third Amendment is not that important to us anymore, since the troops have not been placed in our homes, and the government has not attempted to do that. So we don't really think about that one too much. But the second has been very controversial. in recent years. So what I want you to do is to write a journal prompt, a journal entry in your notebooks regarding this topic. So I want you to answer the following question. Do you think that Americans should be allowed to own guns, or should the Second Amendment be changed or limited in some way? And I want you to explain your answer with lots of examples and reasons why you think why you feel the way you do about the Second Amendment. Okay, and we'll discuss it in class. Okay, so let's move on to the rights of the accused. The First Amendment that protects the rights of people who are accused of crimes is the Fourth Amendment. And so, in a nutshell, it says that the government cannot conduct any unreasonable searches and seizures. If a cop wants to search your home for some kind of evidence of illegal activity, they have to have a warrant before they can do that. And a warrant is issued by a judge when there is sufficient evidence presented to the judge that the probable cause that you have this illegal evidence in your home. All right, so that's a really simplified version of the Fourth Amendment, but basically there cannot be any unreasonable searches conducted by the police. Okay, so the Fifth Amendment is really lengthy, and I'm just going to touch on the most important points. This is another amendment that protects the rights of people who are accused of crimes. And one of the parts of the Fifth Amendment talks about what is known as eminent domain. Basically, that just means that the government cannot take your property without compensating you for it. Meaning, let's say that the government wants to build a highway and it's going to go right through your house. They can force you to move out of your house so they can build their highway, but they have to pay you for the property and they have to pay you fairly for it. And so that's what's covered under eminent domain. Another part of the Fifth Amendment is the indictment provision. So if a person is going to be arrested, there has to be an indictment issued by a grand jury before an arrest is conducted, meaning that a grand jury is presented with evidence, and if they find that there's enough evidence that you might have committed this crime, they would allow for an indictment to be issued, and that is the formal accusation, and then you are arrested. There's also the part of the Fifth Amendment that protects people against double jeopardy. So no one can be tried twice for the same crime. If you are put on trial for a murder and found not guilty, the government cannot put you on trial again and take another shot at it with a different jury or a different judge. The Fifth Amendment also says that a person cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So there is a process that must be followed in order to, incarcerate somebody or take take their property for some reason. That has to follow a process, and everybody must abide by these rules in order for that to happen. And then lastly, a person cannot be forced to say anything that will be used against him or her. So this is probably the part of the Fifth Amendment that you've heard most about, because in TV you might hear someone say, "I plead the Fifth," or you might have heard cops reading someone their rights and saying that anything you say can and will be used against you. They're just warning them that you have the right to not say anything. The government cannot force you to testify against yourself or to say anything that would implicate you in a crime. You have the right to plead the Fifth. Okay, the Sixth Amendment also protects the rights of the accused. It basically states that if someone is put on trial or arrested, they have the right to know why. And it also says that you have the right to a trial by jury, so you can choose to be tried by a jury of peers, or you can choose to be tried by a judge. And there is also the right to an attorney. The Constitution does not say that you have to pay for the attorney, so if you can't, the government must provide you with one. And then we're going to jump to the Eighth Amendment because it's the last one that covers the rights of the accused. The Eighth Amendment says that there cannot be any excessive bails or fines or any cruel and unusual punishment. So basically, torture would be considered cruel and unusual punishment. In some cases, in some states, the death penalty is considered cruel and unusual punishment. And they also state that they cannot fine you a ridiculous amount of money, so the punishment always has to fit the crime. So, for example, if you stole a pack of gum from the grocery store, they can't fine you $1 million because that would be excessive. Okay, so let's go back a little bit to the 7th Amendment, which we put under other amendments. The 7th Amendment is dealing with what we call civil cases. There's two types of cases that are heard in courts. You have criminal cases. Those are people who broke a law. And then there are civil cases. So this is where two citizens might be suing each other, for example, in a divorce, or you fell at HEB and you want to sue them because you broke your leg and they didn't mop up some water. That would be considered a civil dispute. And so in those cases, the 7th Amendment states that you have the right to a jury and not just a judge. And then there's also the 9th Amendment, which I like to call the etc. Amendment. The 9th Amendment pretty much states that citizens have other rights, even if they're not listed in the Constitution. So it's just like, it's just saying that just because it's not in the Constitution doesn't mean it's not my right. For example, the right to an education, or the right to choose who to marry. Those things are ours, but we don't necessarily have them listed in the Bill of Rights. And then lastly, there's the 10th Amendment, which says that the only power that the federal government has are the powers listed in the Constitution. Any other powers not listed in the Constitution then automatically belong to the states. So I'll give you an example. The Constitution does not say that the federal government sets speed limits. So each state sets their own speed limits. The Constitution doesn't say how education will take place in each of these states. So each state is going to create its own education department, its own schools, and it looks different no matter depending on where you live, right? Because states are the ones who do that. So that's pretty much it for the 10 amendments of the Constitution. The first 10, which make up the Bill of Rights. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the lecture. If you have any questions, bring them to class. And don't forget that we have that foldable to work on the amendments. Come see me if you need instructions for that. Thanks for watching.